Hey, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I have Oleksandr Khimiak with me today. He is with a company called Advisource AB. He's calling all the way from Malmo, Sweden, and he's here to talk to us about fixing your manufacturing problems with his offering that's called Factory Cortex. Now, it's not software, he's going to tell you that, so he's here to dive into the details. He's going to be with us in just a minute. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey, welcome, Oleksandr. How are you?
Hello, Jim. Always nice meeting you.
Good to see you. We've got a lot to talk about today, so I'm going to jump right to it. Before we talk about your business, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got doing that, what you're doing today?
Yes, I could call myself a hopeless generalist. So I've been in manufacturing business. Actually, my first job as an 18-year-old student was in an American manufacturing factory in the middle of Missouri. And I spent about 13 years now in manufacturing, starting from the process engineering, building the green fields, and then establishing the supply chains, and then turning into the lean and Six Sigma, and then becoming a quality manager, going through the operational roles, maintenance, technical department, then industrial project engineering, and then I, for some reason, decided to jump into the new world of IT in sales in IT, essentially. So okay. I have seen manufacturing from a variety of different perspectives, and I myself think that I have a wholesome understanding of the current issues, challenges, and the ways around them. And since about 1 year, I have been developing with my team a concept that is called Factory Cortex. So this is essentially a cognitive layer on top of your processes, machines, men like employees, all your system combined, and then algorithms that are trained on them to recognize. Okay, we will jump into details, but this is essentially what I'm doing right now. And happy to talk about these challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you mentioned that you've spent all that time in manufacturing, and really a lot of it on the front lines, because I think that's where a lot of solution providers fall down, is they don't know what the user, the end user of their products is going through. How does that color what you do? How does that, kind of shape what you're focused on with your new endeavors?
Very good question, Jim. I think that I will not paint myself as a IT guy, because that's not who I am. I do have a partner that is very deep into that one. This is how the synergies work, yeah. But for me, it's super easy to speak with production operations folk, because you're right. I've been through that. I've been through this burnout from firefighting and the hopelessness of not being able to fix anything long term. Yep. Just surviving from day to day. So, I used to speak about so-called deep manufacturing. Normally, you have these top dogs in the top industries that have a lot of money to invest into their processes, and then there are the rest. And I'm from the rest of us, to be honest.
Yep, you and me both. So you definitely got my ear. I love what you said there, that the hopelessness. I mean, anyone who has spent much time on the floor in manufacturing has been through that, where you're just pulling your hair out and you don't know what to do, and you got stuff you got to get done. So tell us more detail now about what you have going on and what your offerings are.
So if you don't mind, we can frame it in a way that would go from the big picture to the solution. Yeah.
Perfect.
So first of all, I maintain that the Western manufacturing have been inside of a structural 4-decade crisis, a perpetual crisis, essentially. We had a variety of challenges. I would say there are 3 main of them. First of all is globalization that has completely hollowed out the industrial base of West. Factories were pushed into competing with regions that were competing on a totally different rules. Like you could have a very cheap labor, you had weak environmental and labor protection, export heavy subsidies like you see with China right now. And meanwhile, the Europe and the US, very often you could see the regulations were just imposing a higher cost. So the result, I think, for me was very predictable. We just shifted the whole supply chains. Maybe some assembly factories are staying, but majority of the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers are already operating in China.
Right.
And so that is the first major blow. And then the second one is that naturally the Western countries has become service economies. So what had happened is the best talents, because of this competitive push from the offshoring, the best talents was drawn into the service economy. So why would they stay in this, located somewhere farther away, the dusty facility, mediocre wages? You don't really have a career path to grow into. If you can just jump into a nice office facility, work from home, maybe have a decent pay. So then that has led to chronic pipeline drain, essentially.
Yeah, well, and add to that, something that I've been banging the drum about is for at least 2 generations now, we've been denigrating manufacturing jobs. We've been sending everyone to college, regardless where their natural abilities lie. So we've kind of created or added to that problem that you talked about.
So true. And now we speak back about the best opportunity of earning 6-figure job is to learn how to weld.
Yeah, come full circle, hasn't it?
Yeah, fantastic. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a video on YouTube about the one YouTuber tried to produce made in US grill brush, and it was a fantastic endeavor, but he didn't succeed. And it actually unearthed an important point of disappearing professions like die casters.
Right.
Like you can design the die cast or injection mold in US, but there is very few people who can produce them.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a bit of a side topic.
No,
really.
I mean, it goes to exactly what you said. We still have plenty of industry, but whole swaths of it have been hollowed out. And so you do have those huge gaps.
Yeah, and I think, like, if to return to the point of discussion, the third huge is a generational bomb, essentially, and it went off.
Right.
And now we are in the midst of a peak 65 when baby boomers are like retiring, and the baby boomers are the biggest cohort, and a huge chunk of them have been working in the industry. And about 4 million Americans will retire this year. And Europe and Asia have hit it long before that. So those 3 significant factors, they have essentially destroyed industrial footprint long term. And what we are observing right now is I call it a knowledge amputation, essentially. So I think that what we have done, just to make it a long story short, we have traded several things. We have traded prosperity of our regions, like if you think about the whole Rust Belt, for cheaper imports.
Right.
We have traded our factories for fulfillment centers. Amazon is now the largest employer in the US. And then we traded time to prepare for this knowledge exit for the short-term margin increase for the next quarter,
Yeah. Just kind of shoveled everything offshore.
And now what we see is like, okay, China is starting to use the manufacturing as a leverage, and they have grown the industrial footprint and grown many generations of people that have been deeply involved into the manufacturing. Now we see their strides with the robotics, for instance. They will definitely be able to build their own chips soon. And we suddenly realize that this cost of surrendering industrial capacity is a tremendous risk.
Yeah, well, it's risky economically for sure, and more we're realizing the national security risks as well.
Yeah, but like if you think about, let's try to turning into perspective of our audience, maybe. Yeah, so imagine we are a production, maybe plant manager of a tier 1 supplier somewhere in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And we diligently come to our workplace, and then we participate normally in the morning pulse meeting. Yeah, it's 7:30 a.m. First thing you realize is your bottleneck has been standing still since 4 a.m.
Hmm.
And what was the reason? A bit unclear, but looks like short stops during all night. That every stop has probably generated a risk for defect. There are many defects that have been identified. Many probably hasn't been yet identified, so you have to block your work in progress and inspect it. Then you have maintenance being on it, but to be honest, no one can explain what exactly is happening. There are some guesses, and then in the meanwhile, you also have two urgent make-to-orders, order from logistics, and they have to be delivered to the customer end of day tomorrow. It's super stressful. Can you imagine yourself standing there in the middle of a shop floor? It's early morning.
I don't have to imagine. I don't have to imagine. I've been there. You have too, right?
Yes, many times. And then you realize, okay, so there's going to be another day of firefighting.
Right.
And then you give it some half an hour, maybe an hour, do some important work in the morning, and then you need to check the status. And status arrives, and it's still unclear what was the root cause. So you have to join the problem-solving team, essentially. And you start to look into that. Was it the raw material? Because the quality department has recently approved a new supplier, or maybe it was an old sander machine from 90s that's causing the problem, or maybe it was a night shift operator that was misadjusting some sensor. I don't know.
Yeah.
And you start digging into that, and maybe in 1-2 hours you get into the root cause. And they spotted somewhere there was some misalignment of a side pressure, and then it causes uneven tension, and then it caused the micro stops, and every micro stop was causing a quality defect, essentially. So you don't know, but probably the night shift operator, he was quite fresh on the job. He misread some SOP, because you have like a thick folder of SOPs, hundreds of them, very dusty. It has to be dusty folder of 100 SOPs. Right. And he probably set the tension wrongly, and this caused all this mess. So what you do diligently, you ask the night supervisor to speak with the operator and confirm what happened, if he misaligned or not, if he misread the operational procedure. He will follow it up, maybe, but the quality of this follow-up is very often not the highest one.
Yep.
So
I think it's done at all.
Exactly. And then it's end of the day, and tomorrow you will come back, and probably something else will break, and you will chase the next thing again. So it's a sort of a never-ending loop, essentially.
Yep.
I don't know. How does it sound?
Way too familiar.
That's good.
Well, it's not
Then
good.
that's not good, but at least we are understanding the problem,
For
because
sure. Yeah.
like if you think about the lean or Six Sigma, you always start from understanding the problem. You never start
Right.
jumping to solution. So
Right.
having the validation of this problem is really important, because if you think about it, it's like every hour, I've read it somewhere, I will have to double check, but I think it was between average $5,000 and $50,000 per hour of unplanned stop. Big dogs are probably, that's in the millions for them, but average, I think it's fair to say 5,000 to 50,000 euros per hour of unplanned stop seem rational. I think most of us sort of understand it, but it's like if you think about deeper into this problem, then the issues start compounding, because whenever you have unplanned stop, probably some hour before that, the process started to drift somewhere. There was some rising variation. Something was happening, maybe temperature growth or vibration growth, whatever. And then it broke, or there was a process failure, whatever. And then your people start to troubleshoot. And it takes, 1 hour, 5 hours, depending on the situation. And then there is a scrap, of course, downstream occurring due to that. And then you need to catch up with this make to orders, and you need the overtime. And like if you think about how much is not captured, I can tell you that I've seen recently the factories, the bottlenecks on them are delivering a 50% OEE, and 25 to 30% of the non-OEE, or like it's 1/4 of a whole available time, is essentially micro stops and low production speed.
Yep.
Which is the way to tell you as auditor, I don't have a clue where my stops are.
Mm-hmm.
That is a situation. And like if you think about how often do these disruptive events happen, I would fairly reasonably could assume that, at least from my experience, and we were not like a bad factory. We had somehow working operational lean manufacturing program, but we were quite restrained in our resources and the ability to buy new processes and new machines. So I'm speaking from my experience. Of course, experience of every plant operations manager is going to be different, but I would assume that 1 to 2 times per week there was some disruption on some of the line. Not all the time the bottleneck, but there were breakdowns and process failures and the quality issues and micro stops and so on. And micro stops were happening every shift essentially. No one was even thinking about them as a problem. They have been, along with low production speed, accepted as a sort of just a background noise. Mm-hmm. That is something that is happening. It's chronicle. We don't know how to solve it. It just is. And the quality deviation, I think it's fair to say, something happened on some of the lines at least weekly.
Yeah.
Some new sort of unexpected defects that had to be rectified.
Yeah,
so
those things are really interesting because, naturally we tend to focus on those big dramatic stops and think that those are the real cause of our shortfalls, when it could be those micro stops, 5 times the effect of the big stops, and we're just not seeing it.
True. You only are able to see the surface symptoms essentially.
Yep.
Because you are all fighting all the day. You don't see the forest behind the trees.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that. And then, okay, you are now in this situation. And now just imagine what's going to happen in a few years' time when your best, most knowledgeable veterans will retire eventually.
Right.
And you are ending up in a situation when the shrinking workforce, because the millennials and Gen Z are much smaller generations than the baby boomers. They are not willing to work in the manufacturing facilities. They are not likely to move from where they live. They are not loyal as baby boomers. So you have to somehow retain your throughput, your quality levels with this new workforce. This, I think, is somehow underestimated existential threat for any factory.
Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think anyone who's worked on the factory floor, who's watching or listening to this show, is nodding his or her head violently, saying, "Yeah, been there, done that." So let's talk about what you guys bring to the table to attack that.
I think that I think the only way to attack it is a combination of the Lean Six Sigma and the data science. So
Okay.
the problem essentially is reframing it. You have a lot of problems. The tribal knowledge is there, but no one is capturing it. You don't have no clue about root causes of your issues. What else? Every badge is not really consistent. I think it's good enough to summarize. What is needed for us right now is a combination of lean framework with the data engineering and the data science, and this is the essence of the Factory Cortex. So what is going on on your factory is your machines are speaking to you all the time, but it just sounds gibberish because you are not able to comprehend these signals. That is a bad part. What your veterans are doing, they are unconsciously capturing these signals and patterns, but they cannot explain it to you. How do they do it? Very often it's just called intuition. What is possible right now with the advent of algorithms, and I'm not speaking about the ChatGPT, LM, whatever, it's just a good old machine learning.
Yep.
Is you are able to train algorithms on the data coming from your machines and your processes, and they will be, together with the operator, a source of your institutional knowledge, essentially. But it sounds very ambitious, but it just needs to be split per phases. And essentially what we can both agree on, I guess, is it's very important to show the return of investment. It sounds ambitious, but it just sounds like another digital transformation strategy. The point that we are maintaining is that you have to start with finding your most pressing issues, and this is where the Lean Six Sigma is helping out tremendously. And then you attack it with the combination of Six Sigma tools and the collecting of the data from the machines and the process. And so essentially those are like a 5 phases. You have a phase 1, which is a sort of a exposing the reality.
Mm-hmm.
You have a phase 2, which is, I call capture the signals, where you collect all the PLC, SCADA, historian tags, all the curves, or the positions of the specific fitting sensors, the microstop logs, everything that is existing there, along with the MES information, ERP information, as much as possible. The more context, the better, essentially. And then you start training these algorithms to detect the drift, trying to attack the most important pressing issues first, just like we explained about the microstops and low production speed, and then maybe some drift in the process, maybe some instability of the current of the welding. I don't know. There are so many opportunities with that.
Yeah. I should jump in and say here, you were freezing up a little in the last few minutes, and just for people watching, I know that's a little disconcerting, but Oleksandr is calling in from Sweden today, so the pipes between here and there are obviously a little clogged. Bear with us, but I'm glad you mentioned that about ERP and MMS and those things. I would assume then your software has the ability to integrate with those existing packages people already have in place?
What I usually tell to the clients is that we don't sell software. We sell the service. You cannot delegate the build-up of your own Factory Cortex to some external party. You have to own it, and we will help you to build that. It's not a software. We will work along with you to get it to work. What is really important is, again, everything is a sort of it's on a probability scale. So sometimes it may be that we just chosen together a wrong problem to solve, that there are some very crucial signals that are missing, and that the correlation between the two variables, input and output, for instance, is not very clear. That's just how it is, and we know that from the Six Sigma deployment. That's not unusual. We just need to treat it correctly, do our learning, and attack the next bottleneck more rigorously. That's what we have to do, and this will be learning by doing every time, because every factory is unique. Every way collective, how the knowledge is retained and spread is unique, or every single machine has been modified in a very unique way. Every factory is using slightly different raw material. The best practices are also different, so you cannot just copy paste it from factory to factory. I hope I answered your question.
You did, and actually I find it refreshing, because so many people want to pretend they can offer a cookie cutter solution. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been in well over 100 factories myself, and every single one of them is unique. That being said, does that imply that every solution then is a custom solution?
It will be. There are let's call it like that. There is a specific need for every factory. Maybe some of you don't need this cutting-edge customized solution. Maybe you only need to fix one specific facet or the side of the problem. Let's call it. I don't know. Maybe you need a problem. You have a problem with the onboarding, and then we will find a tool, a software, a product that will be solving it for you, and we will integrate that product.
Yeah.
But like, if you think about the build-up of a Factory Cortex, a fully functioning one, you will need to build up the data infrastructure, and also consider to redesign your manufacturing process in a way that would allow for the real-time data collection. Like, think about that. There is no way for algorithm to comprehend the impact on the quality if quality is being checked after 3 days, and you cannot bring it in relation to a specific batch. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So you have to have a sort of quality gate, or the best case scenario, you have some sort of a Jidoka incorporated in your line, or Pokayoke, and that would allow you essentially to track the patterns to a very specific produced unit, and that is a totally different level of a control. So yeah, there will be a lot of like a feedback. Think about how important it is to have a structured root cause analysis as a part of this project, to make sure that the algorithms are being trained on the correct context. Think about operator feedback, how important it is that the operator is able to provide the feedback to the algorithm, saying, hey, something is wrong here. You're telling me this unit has to be defective, but it's not. I have checked it. So I need to provide you feedback so you can train it and be better for the next version. There is a lot. It's essentially, like, in the long term, that's a business transformation. But I cannot find another way out of this mess, to be honest. We need to transform.
That's completely understandable. And again, I think anyone out there who's been neck deep in these things would also understand that there's no cookie cutter solution out there. So what about folks who are ready to move? How do they assess whether you guys are right for them? How do they get started?
Normally, how do we operate? We engage with the client and we say to them, please provide us with your logs. If you have any logs of your machines, like essentially, if you have a PLC system that is connected to some distributed control system or the SCADA, you are the perfect candidate for the Factory Cortex because you already have a signal infrastructure in place. If you have a historian, that's even better. Then if you do have only PLCs that are not connected, this will be a bit trickier because you would need to build up a physical infrastructure in place to collect all those signals, and then we can build together that infrastructure for the on-prem or cloud or hybrid solution together. The most problematic clients will be, of course, the ones that haven't fully completed the digital transformation in a way of entering data into the system. So, for instance, if you're still using the paper format for your quality checks, you're probably out of the game. You have to get to the level where it makes sense to train the algorithms in this data. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. So, to revert back to your question, we would normally go with 1 week of assessment of these documents that you provide after one session of a conversation with your team. And then the business analyst and the data scientist would look at this data and make a list of assumptions, essentially. Yeah, those are the assumptions.
Yep.
And then we sit together with your team and show you these assumptions. And you point out and say, this looks like it's interesting assumption. Like, let's go and try to find this correlation, if there is a correlation or not. And so we work for a short period of time, maybe like 2 to 4 weeks, for a very limited cost, because I know how important for you not to spend a whole lot of money without clear return of investment. Sure. So essentially, we limit your risk to a smallest possible degree and sort of provide you at the end a pre-study with a business case. It will show to you how large is the probability of success here, what are potential benefits, what are the costs of this solution, like a lifetime cost, including the OPEX, and then what is your return of investment, and B cross C. And then you can bring it to your management and say, hey, look, here is a business case. It looks like an interesting thing. Let's invest into that. We will have a return of investment in 1.5 years. So this is how we normally operate.
Got it. Okay. We're getting close on time. So I just wondered, is there something I haven't asked you that folks out there who are interested in this ought to know or ought to be doing to set themselves up?
There is so much buzz right now about AI, and everyone tries to scramble for action. I would go with not asking yourself where I have to put this robot or where I have to use the AI, but what is my most pressing issue? Because like I mentioned to you, the first crucial step to fix anything is to understand what the problem is.
Yep.
And when you understand what the problem is, you have plenty of tools to fix it. It doesn't have to be AI. It doesn't have to be Factory Cortex. It has to be a rigorous approach that will change the culture of your place from the firefighting towards the continuous improvement.
Very good answer. How do people find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn mainly, spending too much time there. So
I will include a link in the show description to your profile.
Yes, thank you very much, Jim.
Yep. And then your website?
Yes, my website is theadvisors.com. Yes.
Okay. And we'll get that link in there as well. Fascinating stuff. I think there are going to be a lot of people listening and watching this who will be vigorously nodding their heads in recognition of some of the situations you laid out. So plenty of opportunity out there. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so if you find yourself pulling your hair out on the factory floor, maybe Oleksandr has the solution for you. Get a hold of him. Again, we'll have links in the show description. If you like that show, I've got another great one for you next week. We've got Nick Reinhardt. He was with a company called Create. And all I can say is they're using some modern new tech to put a new face on some old school manufacturing. So Nick is going to be here to talk all about it next week. Be here. We'll be here. See you then. Jim Vinosky with Manufacturing Talks. So long.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.